we'll have healthy forests. But let's talk about, we started with forest fires. We wanted to have these issues together. What's the number one cause of forest fires? Oh, that's right, people. So by introducing access into these back countries and to say that we won't have an increased fire risk in the West, we're also conflating this, and we're conflating this as though this is a Western issue. The roadless issue applies to 39 states. The National Park Service governs so many different kinds of ecologies and systems. And I do think there's a well-honed argument by biologists about how to clean and prepare for our lands. And I think Mike and I probably have a lot of commonality when we talk about forest management. Yeah. Don't let them conflate that the roadless issue equals good forest management. Mike will agree that if we're bringing in heavy-duty equipment and we're forging new roads into backcountry areas, it probably won't be in the interest that we've gained in the last 25 years. So an overall celebration of this I don't agree with. You and I don't like building new roads and logging. You took first crack at this, but the commercial logging was problematic and will continue to be if that's what you kids start doing again.
No, we need to get back to commercial logging, but let's set this aside. There are two different issues. So there's the issues that came out where the Biden administration closed a whole bunch of roads, and maybe that's. This is something.
I'm talking about the roadless issue.
This is something totally different.
That was enacted by the Clinton administration that cut off access into Forest Service. I'm not talking about 2 weeks ago.
But it's only for maintenance. These are not roads that people can go on.
You can new cut roads now under this by releasing this.
But it's only for maintenance purposes, and then they close. So they come in, they cut the road, and again, it's not a main road. This is like
so Mike the Hunter could use the road.
It's basically the size of a 4-wheeler. Okay, it's a teeny road. Okay, and they come in with as little disturbance as possible. They come in, pull the trees out, clear the forest, or thin the forest, whatever this forest certain needs. They thin it, and then they close the road off. You can't drive on the road in the future. They come in and rehab the road, put vegetation and good habitat back in, and then so it's still closed off.
This was put in place because of the commercial logging, and every condition you just described is not adequate for commercial logging.
You can argue in some cases maybe they overdid some of the commercial logging, maybe in some areas they didn't.
But this re-permits that. We didn't learn from our mistakes.
So then
we just wiped it out with our big old hatchet that the Republicans are using on everything. Let's do good public policy.
No. The Clinton administration wiped it out with their big hatchet when they came in and said, no more, you can't even maintain, you can't even do anything. Can't even use the roads that we already built.
Where you're talking about actually active forest management, that's not what just happened with the secretary.
No, it is, because they can come in, they still have everything that they need to follow, and hopefully they do. To your point, I hope they do take the things that we've learned in the past and we don't overdo.
Cross kind of help, or like you gave me a thumbs up. There's no guarantees.
Could it open the door to logging?
It does.
It could, and it should.
The door.
And it should. Logging is a good thing.
And I'm sorry, we're logging again on a teeny little ATV track
that
we gently curate.
Yes, they take them in on little tracks. Yes, they do. No. They take them in on little roads, and then they haul them out on those little roads to the bigger roads, and with just a handful at a time onto a bigger road where they put them on a semi. That's what they do. And the big roads are already there. They're already there. We're just talking the little roads to go in. And then again, they close them off.
If this was the goal of the Trump administration, they wouldn't have reversed the Clinton ruling. They would have taken the 30 years worth of information that they had about how these inaccessible growths came, and they would have come out with a curated, smart policy that would have involved folks like you. But instead, we're reversing what we say are democratic things. We're bringing in industrial, taking out of our lands exactly at a time when our wildlife and our wilderness can't afford to have this happen to it.
I would wholeheartedly disagree, because I see the numbers on our wildlife, and our wildlife are at an all-time low because we are not managing our forests. We need to do these things. We need to thin some of the forest. We need to do some logging. We need to cut it. It will reduce
our
fire.
That's their motto.
No, it's not about more people.
Wildlife needs more people.
These roads do not add more people to it. They close the roads off. After they do it, they close the roads off. You can no longer drive on the roads. And they put habitat back in that do benefit the forest. And when you go in and thin the forest, it takes out all those trees that are shading the understory that you can't grow anything on, takes them out, thins them out, and then you grow habitat that actually support the wildlife.
Is
this
this
a good
an
thing.
unfair advantage for hunters, though, if you know that when you replant on these little roads or trails that you can find the animals there and then you can kill them easier? This is concerning for me, like you're giving them a head start, giving you a head start. I don't know. All right, we're going to have you back in a year and see what happens after the road's been opened and if they're chopping down our entire forest or just lightly raking and cleaning them up.
They will lightly rake and clean them up.
Lightly rake.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about hatchets here.
You can trust the politicians.
You can trust us. In the great state of Utah, the union bill officially got enough signatures. The opposition was not able to get rid of enough of those signatures. So it has now been placed officially, like it'll be on the ballot in 2026. So it won't be this fall, but next year. So the question at this point, Speaker Schultz, will this bill go down in flames with the people of Utah voting against it? Or will there be some kind of consensus where those who wrote the bill will go talk to the other side and work out something nice?
Or it goes up in flames with the people voting for it, right? Because
also a possibility, yeah.
There was a poll that just came out. Deseret News released a poll. I think it was 36% that were in favor of it, 32% opposed, 32% hadn't decided yet. So let me get to the basics of this bill. The thing that the unions are not happy about is it took away their collective bargaining. What is collective bargaining? The right to strike. Okay, and again, these are only public unions.
So we're talking teachers,
we're talking
police
officers,
officers,
we're talking
firefighters.
Salt Lake City police officers and Salt Lake City police or firefighters. Outside of that, no other firefighters or police agency uses collective bargaining. Okay, so it only affected the Salt Lake City Fire Department as well as the Salt Lake City Police Department. Now, the teachers union, the UEA, yes, it does affect them broadly all across the state. But again, collective bargaining is the only thing it takes away is the right to strike. Okay, just let's keep that in mind. And so, I don't think the teachers union has lost as much as they think they've lost. But let me also point out a couple things that this bill did. Right now, the taxpayers are on the hook for the union leaders' pensions. I don't think that most taxpayers agree with that, okay? So I think that's one of the great things in this bill. I don't think the taxpayers should be responsible for the union's retirement, their pensions. It's not fair. Another thing it did is it gave teachers another options for liability insurance at a very reduced rate. It was optional, and it's something as we've been out talking to teachers, that most of them would like to have other options for insurance. And so that would go away with it as well. So we'll see what happens on this. I know the sponsor, Representative Tusher, has been in discussions with the unions, with the teachers union. They've, in the past, been not really collaborative, and so I'm not real excited that we'll see any movement there, but let's see what happens.
What I'm most bummed about is that in the span of 30 days, 320,000 Utahns signed saying, could you guys go back to the drawing board and figure this out? I think they ended up validating around 250,000 of those signatures, but we have not seen that much focused outcry. Now, we don't know what exactly everyone was thinking in that instance. We don't know what the decisions were. But without a doubt, if you're looking at the mood of the constituencies in Utah, they're saying, you know what? We don't think you guys got this right during the session, and we think you can reconsider it. And I'm a little astonished that the executive and legislative branches aren't hearing that. Just that alone. Go back to the drawing board. Please try better at this. And that they're playing the brinksmanship of taking it to a vote. So first, super disappointed that our leadership at the state level isn't hearing the part where 320,000 Utahns in 30 days say, could you go about the doing business better? Now, Mike and I disagree on some of the details of this. Collective bargaining during the history of the United States of America. So first, we're an at-will work state. We're not a union work state. Collective bargaining has been most impactful for all of us having potential living wages, all of us not being 14 years old and working a 12 and 14-hour day, all of us getting a rate increases. So it is not used as a strike weapon. That's always the last resort. The reason it's the last resort is you don't get paid when you go on strike. Collective bargaining in itself defines itself. So we all band together, and 60 voices are stronger than one voice. And make no mistake, unions in America have defined an 8-hour workday, and they've done all that. The one thing that's also, and I'll just tell you, the reason people are so compelled by this is like when Mike points out that I have to pay for the state pensions. Yeah, I actually pay for all public employees' retirement.
This isn't state
Part of the
pensions.
Utah-
These are private union
I know, but
private
you know what
union
I do?
employees.
When
They're
you're
not state.
when you're a public employee, of which there are many of you, and I want to thank you for your service right now. Yes, I help pay for your retirement. You know what? I'm cool with that. I'm cool with collective taxation being in the public interest. All you teachers, I'm okay helping with your retirement because you helped educate my kids.
Teachers
you know what?
are different than union bosses. This is
and
not we're
public
not.
employees, but I'm telling you, your argument that taxpayer dollars shouldn't offset people doing public service, I disagree with that. I am fine with all you public workers. You go out there, you can have a portion of my taxes
Whoa.
because
We're
I
not
value
talking
what you're
teachers.
saying.
We are not talking teachers. We're not even talking
You're saying
teachers that
pensions,
serve.
but I'm pointing
we're
out
not
that
even talking about
URS
teachers
is
inside.
also driven by our taxes.
Yes.
We're underwriting all public employees. But what is audacious to me is that 320,000 Utahns
come
in
back to
30
that.
days say, hey, what do you say you come and talk to us? And you want to know what the root of this is?
Most of which were
The
paid,
root
by
of
the way.
it is-
Paid people that got the signatures.
You're
but-
paid too, my friends.
I
Like,
know.
people
Okay.
get paid. I pay people
You act
all
like there's
the
this
time.
huge grassroots that coming out against it. Which,
Definitionally, there
most
is
of
a
the
huge
signature
grass-
gathered
I
were
didn't say-
paid for
I
by
didn't say
paid signature
against or
gatherers.
for. I'm saying, as a legislator, you had 320,000 Utahns in 30
Right.
days say to you, why don't you all try and get along a little more? And because the root of this is they were too sassy to me,
Okay.
and maybe you don't know who I am.
Okay.
And I think maybe the arrogance should be stepped aside a little bit, and we talk about it a little bit more.
got
Why
three
take
things that
this
I've
to a
gotta
vote?
hit on.
Did you
Okay.
take time to reflect on this after they got all those signatures? Like Mara's mentioning, did you go out on the ranch and just stand alone and think to yourself, I've been a bad
Maybe I should
legislator?
listen.
No, I didn't. Especially after I saw the poll where it says 36%. The majority of the
Okay,
those
wait. So
in
the
the poll.
polling, if the polling were different, you'd be for this? Because let's talk about the poll for a minute.
Well, no, hold on.
800 sample pushed out on a web, and it was essentially a tie vote. I mean, the only thing interesting about
It
that
just
poll is
says it's-
63% of the people were decided.
It just says that it's
It's a-
split
it's-
issue,
it's-
right? It's a real issue that the legislature
But
came
you're
out to solve.
suggesting that if more of us had been in favor, you would capitulate to it? I don't think you would.
I don't know whether I would or whether I wouldn't, but let me just say this. So here's what I do know. You talk about coming together. The legislature tried and tried and tried and tried to get the unions to negotiate. When you don't negotiate and you don't come to the table, it's not on the legislature.
Yeah, it
we
was.
tried. No.
You have the power. You just got mad at them. You don't
No,
like when people sass you too much.
No.
Because you're not used to opposition.
The
But, like,
legislature tried. We threw out all sorts of different options, and the answer was always no. We tried. There were 4 different substitutes.
and you're just plumb worn out. There's just no more gumption in
You have to have
negotiate
somebody when they
anymore.
don't want to negotiate. Then they don't want to negotiate. There's nobody. How do you
So
negotiate with
you're
somebody that
saying
doesn't want to
right
negotiate?
now, currently, nobody in the unions want to negotiate this out.
No, I think you
away
could have worked.
from an
I
election.
think we could have worked something out really easily
Can't
with the
you still work it
firefighters and the
out?
police officers, which
Can't
we
you still work it out?
probably will. But the problem is with the UEA, they wanted no part of negotiations, and anyways, that's the problem. So let me come back to another thing that you talked about, the union pensions. We're not talking teachers, okay? We're not talking teachers and the state
No, we're talking firefighters
taxpayers.
and cops.
And we're not talking firefighters or cops. We're talking union representatives that work for the union, that are not teachers, that only work for the union. The state is paying for the taxpayers. Everybody listening to this podcast are paying for the pensions of those union bosses.
Right, and I'm paying for
They are a
administrators.
private entity.
I'm paying
Where
for
do you dri-
legislators.
But an administrators
Everyone who
that
works
works-
and uses taxpayer dollars, I'm currently underwriting you.
The
You
union-
are welcome, Mike.
the
You're
union-
welcome for the insurance you get from being a legislator. And you know what? I don't mind. Thank you for your service.
So you're okay with a private entity, private entity paid for not by taxpayer dollars, getting.
So this is
Yeah,
new
because
information
in
to
order
my
to
So
brain.
get
where do
their
you draw that line?
In order
Everybody-
to get their status, they have to affiliate with the union, just like you
I'm part
have
of
to
the-
be an elected official to get state underwritten insurance. And I'm paying for your salary right now.
I'm
and
part
again,
of several
I appreciate
organizations.
it.
I'm part of several organizations
and you
that go
haven't
out
joined
and
the
promote healthy wildlife all across the state. Should the taxpayers be responsible for those their retirement?
So I very seldom
Where do you
throw
draw
down
that line?
person.
I'm sorry, I do
I've
not think
never
unions.
thrown down, but Mike, I'm a small business owner. I have never had the government pay my way. I have never been a part of a government system other than when I ran the Centennial Commission, in which I didn't really care either way, but hey, that's the way the state does it. But I'm just telling you, Mike, it's not a valid argument to say you don't believe that unions should be underwritten by taxpayers. That's a valid point of view, but that's not an indictment of whether we should allow people to collectively, in the United States of America, join together and petition for quality work. We're $7.25 an hour on a living wage, which means
nobody makes anymore. Everybody makes more
right,
than
because
that.
you can't make that much, and yet you refuse to raise it. And those conversations are being brought up by the unions. I don't have any problem with them being supported.
They can still come together as an organization. They can still go.
If it doesn't matter, then give them collective bargaining. You're about to say it doesn't matter that they can collective bargaining. It does.
The only thing that inside that bill that stopped the collective bargaining was the right to strike.
Right.
That's it. So they can still come make those arguments
for wages.
No, they can still
wages.
No. They can still petition. They can still petition collectively
that is not
together.
my reading of the bill. You and
Yes,
I
they can.
disagree on the reading of the bill. Then
Okay. Well, and then all we need is a small clarification, because I do know that that's the case.
No.
It is. They can still collectively go together as an organization.
No, in fact, the floor sponsor went out of his way to point out that you'll be so much more effective going one-on-one and petitioning with your boss on the wages. He went out of his way to tell us how beautiful it will be when I go one-on-one.
He also said that organization can still go together and argue on behalf of their members for pay. The only thing they can't do is use the ability to strike as negotiating tactic.
Why would this be an important thing for the state legislature?
I don't think teachers should be striking. Again,
but why would this be an important policy measure for this? We're not a union state. We don't have we're not governed by union structures. We don't have any real threat of unions negotiating workplace, manipulating a workplace. So if this is not a power struggle, if this is a policy struggle, there's no policy merit here.
We're starting
what it stops is voices that oppose what a monolithic legislature thinks.
I just want to say it's starting to get to some of those areas inside of the NEA, which is then coming into the UEA. And so you look at some of the policies and different things that's being pushed inside of the NEA.
So
and
you don't like their opinions. They don't like that they're challenging your policy.
And it's more than just that. I would say the vast majority.
Duke it out with them.
Okay. So, so again, we are, and that's what we're doing. But I think, I do think that it's come back to the UEA and others and pushing policies inside our schools that most UConns disagree with. That's problematic. That's where this comes from. That's why.
Sounds like no deal. Get your pen ready. It looks like you're voting next year.
It will be really interesting because
we'll
we're
see
going
where this
to keep
goes.
watching. It would be in the state's interest. I think it's in the citizens' interest to negotiate this out.
And I agree 100%. My hope is that the UEA comes to the table.
Agree with you.
Comes to the table and actually negotiates this out. Again, the firefighters and policemen, we know we could get there. Police officers, we could get there easy.
You'll let the police women in.
You're going to start a whole new fight with Mara here. Another fight that's going on the national level is the BBB, the Big Beautiful Bill. I almost wrote BBB, but I'm like, are we going to get confused with the Better Business Bureau? No, this is the Big Beautiful Bill. The hope is still to have it signed, sealed, and on the president's desk by the 4th of July, Independence Day. I don't see that happening yet, but we will hold our breaths. Senator Lee is in the negotiations right now trying to make sure that he can get his land deal in there for public lands. But it has had a huge outcry, both Republican, Democrat, against it. Governor Cox is actually speaking up in favor, saying that it should be put back in the bill. It was officially pulled out on Monday night, I believe, because it just wasn't working. Governor Cox believes that he can still make it work if he changes it and makes it so that it's only lands within 5 miles where we already have communities. Mara, we talked about this last week. Obviously, he was having a lot of pushback. He says that he's listening to people. Has his bridge been burned, or can he still rebuild it in time to get it back in the Big Beautiful Bill?
He made a couple of missteps. One is, who pushed him back was the parliamentarian. When you're being checked for process and you're Mike Lee and you're supposed to be good at process, that's a huge mistake. Two, just structurally, I will say, on behalf of my Republican friends who have said this over and over again, Christmas tree bills are not great policy pieces of legislation. If you believe this can stand on its merit, then have it stand on its merit. The other... Sorry, I have something in my mouth for those listening.
Get rid of it. I know, and it's hot in here, too. If you're watching, I'm fatting myself. It's the hot, sticky room.
The thing that's interesting about this bill is who Mike Lee listened to the most and who has come out voraciously are hunters and anglers. And this has so much complexity now to it. I think many of us don't mind the crafting and narrowing of this proximate to current houses. But again, I will point out that 87% of Westerners do not like this. This is not widely held as a Western issue. Now, if you can narrow it, are there small tracts? Are there acres, not thousands of acres, but acres who should be adjacent? I think there's a really good example, and Celeste Malloy was fighting for this, a really good example in southern Utah where there's some that are truly proximate. But they have to be surgical carve-outs because there are a lot of structural problems. And again, bipartisan problems on this. But for Mike Lee to be irresponsible enough after a couple of weeks of being super irresponsible to try and shove this, what could be a really successful policy discussion and could really smartly, subtly change this law, it does not belong in a Christmas tree bill. It does not belong packed in at the last minute. I was really glad to see the parliamentarian check him. I hope he fails at this. I hope more serious minds come to the forefront and we work out ways to describe unique parcels of land that may want to be co-opted out of this regulatory practice.
He's kind of ending up being the face and the name of this bill, obviously, because he's backing it. But this is an issue that's been around for a long time. I think people think that he came up with this, but I mean, this has been long discussed. Even in the November election last year, both Harris and Trump, when they were running, were in favor of doing this for housing. Did he just go about it the wrong way, sell it the wrong way? What's going wrong? Or is it just bad business?
I agree with some of what Mara just said in regards to, I think the process in which he laid out to go about this was not the right, not the right way. But I also want to come back to, and this is what I really have to hit on and say, the Wilderness Society map is 100% false and 100% wrong, and they know it. The Wilderness Society is basically the same as SUA and Sierra Club, or same organizations. They're all affiliated. To put out those type of lies to get people ginned up against this bill is flat out wrong, and they need to be ashamed of what they're doing because it's wrong. And they know what's in that bill, and they know what it says, and they know that the map that they put out is completely false. And that's what got a lot of people ginned up.
So I can't have a house on this beautiful glacial lake that I want to?
It's not going to work.
Dang it.
No.
I'm going to the Great Salt Lake. That's it.
The problem is and this is Tamara's point, if you're going to do something along this, people have to wrap their head around what are the lands that could happen. And so when I asked Mike Lee's office for a copy, okay, well, if this isn't the right map, then what is the right map? They don't have it. That's the problem. And so you have to specifically define what you're trying to do, what the goals are, and which parcels are, that don't have a recreational interest, that don't, you're not be able to hunt and fish on or whatever reason. And Celeste Malloy actually had a pretty good process and had it defined pretty well. I think if they go back to something along the lines of what Representative Celeste Malloy passed, it'd be a lot more palatable.
I will say the last 30 days have not been great on Mike Lee's public standing and just sort of his seriousness. I think the one thing that Mike Lee is losing, and in many ways it's exactly the criticism that that Speaker Schultz is waging against the Wilderness Society. I think we have to start rewarding serious conversations and start punishing salacious conversations. And no, I'm agreeing with you because I do think we're seeing advocacy groups that are going too far. They're not spinning it, they're lying.
Let's get to policy.
And so I think Mike Lee has been spending too much time for a smart person on antics and not enough on serious policy. This is totally unrelated, so it's probably unfair. But one thing I want to add, since you started with Governor Cox on this, Governor Cox just got appointed as the chair of
that happened last night.
I mean, it's a big stinking deal. And one of the most exciting parts was he laid out broad sweeping terms of an energy policy that Speaker Schultz has also spent a lot of time on, and it was broadly supported. The reason that's so important that WGA supports our energy strategy is in the Intermountain West, none of us are solely independent. I know Utah is going to work on it, but because of our topography and geography, we're really dependent. And I'm leaving California. I'm leaving the coast out of this so we don't have to fight about the coast. Yeah. But I'm talking about our friends in Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho, Nevada.
Yeah.
And so it's really important that we work comprehensively together. And I think it is one of those right time, right places for Governor Cox to be leading WGA right now.
It's really exciting. Governor Cox has done a fantastic job on working together with the energy and taking that and leading out on it. And Utah's benefiting greatly from that right now. We are in talks and discussions with Idaho and Wyoming. To make sure that whatever we do, whatever route we take, we're working collaboratively with those two states.
We have some Colorado transmissions.
We don't have a lot with Nevada and with Colorado. The stuff that we have with Nevada mostly is transmission that goes to California, but we don't have any energy production that we share. But we're open to that, certainly with Colorado and with Nevada if that option opens up. But I agree, leave the coast state, Oregon, Washington, California. Let them do their things.
I just left them out so I wouldn't have to listen to you.
Let them do their things, and their energy costs can.
Well, as Governor Newsom tells us, he's a net importer to us. So thank you, California.
Actually, we import to California. Yes.
So if we go nuclear here in Utah, which is the direction we're going, so we'll go the west if that happens here.
Well, I think that let's talk about the nuclear discussion. We're not going to all of a sudden be 2-3 years away and producing nuclear energy here in the state of Utah. I think we're looking at we're 10, 20 years down the road, but you have to start, and you have to start laying the groundwork now. So I do believe 10, 20 years from now we will be looking at nuclear, and Utah will, and Idaho and Wyoming will be better off than almost any other state out there because we're proactively working towards it. Right now, nuclear is more expensive than our current energy rates, but we know down long term that that will probably flip, and so we're really trying to set us up 10 years.
The Idaho National Lab is going to be really critical for Utah getting small modular reactors. And I think when we talk about nuclear, we shouldn't be generalized about it. I think Utah should only be looking at small cell modular reactors. Yeah. The risk is easier. I think Utah has a history of waste that we need to respect, and small modular has an easier conversation when it comes to waste.
And the great part of the small nuclear reactors, the SMRs as they're referred to, that Mara's talking about, is they roughly produce, let's say maximum, some of them produce 50 megawatts, okay? Right. But some of them produce 300 megawatts, but you can stack them on top of each other. So the coal power plants, most of them produce, let's say 1 gigawatt, okay? Which is 10 megawatts. Okay, so you can, 100 megawatts. Sorry, get my math right. Anyways, but the point is you can stack 3 of those or 4 of those small nuclear reactors together and have 1.2 gigawatts. So to your point, you can do it through SMRs.
And they can also sit alone. What I would watch, if I were watching people like Mike Schultz, I would watch for proximity to populated areas, not so much from a danger point of view, but just from is that the right balance? I don't think we're looking at a dangerous thing, but is that the right balance? And I would also really look at an undue preference for data power as opposed to people power. So if we don't take care of first the families who want to live here, then our nuclear policy isn't faced in the right direction. If we're only looking at big industry making more money out of our live streaming, and I know that live streaming could be a part of your quality of life, but your houses and affordability needs to be much more a part of your quality of life. And the other thing I'm concerned with is in the exuberance and excitement of being innovative, we can't fully put aside all of the regulatory environment around nuclear. There's a reason it exists. And I think I will say, at the risk of the last few minutes we're getting along too much, I mean, I do think that leadership has their eyes on this, but I think that the citizens need to also start supporting leadership and saying, listen, we want to be first, we want to be fast, but we don't want you to put aside regulations that would save our families and our lifestyle and our health later.
Well, I just want to point to your first point. Scott Sandell passed a bill this last year that would make those data centers and others that want the power pay a higher price for that, which would then offset and create a lower price for households and for the citizens themselves. That's been our top priority. And it's, as we've went through this process, we're grateful Rocky Mountain Power has taken that same stance in making sure we put the existing customers and the existing ratepayers and the households and the citizens first. And then look, as there's other opportunities with those data centers that have a lot of money that can build the infrastructure, and that they will build the infrastructure, that infrastructure is then given or used for the residents at a local price. Or go build that
infrastructure in Wyoming and we'll buy your stuff.
Yeah, I need AC over AI.
We want to do it here.
I want to buy it here. I want a perpetual agreement. I want it contracted, but I'm just really fine. As someone who frequently drives I-80, you knock yourself out. You go put it over there, and we'll just draw your power.
We'll do it in someone else's backyard.
Delta would love something like this.
They would
Emory
like
County would love something like this.
They just need one. They don't need the 20 we're going to need to feed the beast. And I'm just saying it wouldn't kill us to put some of this stuff in Wyoming and have proprietary agreements.
Absolutely. Some of them will go in Wyoming. Some of them will go in Utah. And it'll be a great win-win. And it'll be big and beautiful for all of Utah.
Big and beautiful. Here's a random thought. You brought up the governor and being elected to lead the Western governors. And when you are leading Western governors, you're leading Republicans and Democrats. He's also had leadership roles in Republican governor circles. Mara, do you see him building his way to possibly running for president in 4 years, 8 years, or do you not think that's part of the dream?
I think he has a dream of doing something next, is what I will say. I think
that was very vague and PC.
I think for a Western governor, it's a really hard. I mean, Mitt Romney had a lot going in, and whether he was from Utah, I think Mitt Romney had different conditions with name recognition. But national elections are about name recognition and about money, and you don't really have that when you're from.
We have 3.5 million people in our state.
Governor Cox has other aspirations. I think he's young. I think he wants to do more, and I don't think we've seen the end of him. I don't know that this strategically, in my mind, parlays him to a presidential race.
It was the NGA, National Governors Association.
Yes, that's what it was.
Yeah, that Governor Cox was president of. So this is a great win. It's a great win for Governor Cox. It's a great win for Utah, actually. So I'm excited for him.
Does it help you at all in what you're trying to accomplish because he has the ears of other people?
Absolutely. It helps us in all of Utah because as the head of the Western Governors Association, he has a more direct path to the White House. And those are things that matter. We are seeing some of the policies that come out having that direct path into the White House and into the Washington, D.C. in creating a pathway forward.
I know,
so yes,
Utah's all about working with DC now. Y'all are like, give me some more federal government.
Yeah, let me tell you. let me tell you. Let me tell you what's happening. For the most part, they're giving more power back to the states, and so that Utah can manage Utah. That's why we're
that is such a good idea. Except that Congress has to give that power back, and what you're doing is getting smooched by Trump, and we'll see how long that stands up for you. But nonetheless, I hear you're loving on the feds.
I know. So let's go to that. I'm going to skip a couple topics, and we'll get back. Before we go to that, though, yes or no? Yeah. Mike Lee, you said didn't have a map. I'm going back to the lands bill. Yeah. Is he making one?
Yeah, they are. They're working through to get a map.
Okay, because you can't counter lying maps if you don't have a truth serum map.
You should have let out with that.
But you also can't sponsor a bill without having no policy behind it. So what do you say you release the bill, maybe take it seriously, and bring it back when you're ready?
All right, we'll see how that happens. We're going to get back to a couple of other national issues in a moment, but you have been spending a lot of time in Washington, D.C. Have you been wine-dined? What have you been up to?
We're trying to get good policy here in the state of Utah.
What's the best giveaway you've had from the White House?
Do you get something
Let's
good?
Let's get right to the hard-hitting
giveaway?
Do they give you sticky notes from the White House?
Are you telling me Donald J. Trump doesn't have Reagan-esque giveaways?
No. No, they haven't.
Then they are not letting you in on it.
What
I
did
need
Reagan
to get
have?
one of
Man
them.
has tchotchkes. Reagan had China. Reagan had cufflinks. Reagan had M&Ms. What?
I remember the M&Ms.
They don't give
What
them away. You
didn't?
got to buy them. So I did. I bought a cool little coffee mug, little Yeti cup. Yeah.
I want like an M&M. I want something like
that can melt in your
I don't
mouth
know.
from Trump.
I want like a towel.
I'll go
or
give him that idea.
Something.
There you
That's
go.
it. A coffee mug. That's what you have.
Well, it's a Yeti cup, but yeah.
He
So
drinks
it's-
a lot of Diet Coke, so maybe he could have like his Trump Diet Coke or something. They could work with him
Yeah,
on
it's
that.
very
you go.
Utah.
Interesting. So you've been back there several times. You were there first for the MAHA legislation. Utah was a part of that because the legislature got rid of food dyes, and it kind of spiraled into something bigger on the national
On the
level.
national scene,
Do
yeah.
you think it would have happened nationally anyways, or did Utah start the ball rolling to make sure it did happen?
Well, so if you listen to Secretary Kennedy, Secretary Kennedy says that he went back to Washington, and because so many of these large corporations are embedded inside of the FDA, that he's had a hard time making progress inside the own agency that he's there to lead. And when he came back, he ran into a brick wall brick wall until Utah came along, first state in the nation to pass the SNAP, as well as when I say SNAP, that's no soda drink purchases with SNAP benefits, and then also the food dyes in school lunches. When that happened, other states then started to pass some of the same policy, which then drove the food companies to the negotiating table to negotiate with Secretary Kennedy to get the policy on a nationwide front. So
I would assume this makes it easier for Utah schools because it was passed to go into effect. I think it's another year and a half away from when it would. But if Utah schools are trying to find their own food sources that don't have food dyes and the rest of the country doesn't. So it's probably helpful, Mara, for schools here as they're trying to get suppliers for their foods if the whole nation goes along with it.
Yeah, I mean, we're on 2 and 3 generations of trying to increase the health factors. I mean, this is something I'm actually glad that the Republicans who have, I wouldn't say they're resistant, they just really haven't focused on this as much as what I would say.
Yeah, there was pushback
So
from Michelle Obama when she tried
lots
to
of
make a shift.
pushback,
Yeah.
and she had just a lot of goes towards healthy, and some of what's being talked about is really good. The challenge with Kennedy is he's so extreme on some of his issues that you really have to work hard to not throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, hey, listen, 2 or 3 of these ideas are really good. And in an era where I'm in opposition generally to the Trump administration, I think that my challenge and challenges who are folks who are left of center is to say, hey, even if I don't disagree with you, if they're onto something good, will I
Let's
have the
work
courage
together.
to support them,
Yeah.
even though what I want to do is wholesale disparage them, which doesn't get us anywhere.
So it's interesting. So as I went back to Washington for the first time for that press conference, I was just talking to several people in the crowd. Several of them were extremely liberal people, and they said, we don't understand it because other than it's just anti-Trump. But actually the left let
Has
out.
been
They
trying to
actually,
pound this
yeah,
for a
and they're
while.
grateful that Secretary Kennedy came
Yeah.
along and helped
Yeah.
bring along, and President Trump brought along
Right.
the
'Cause
MAGA
Kennedy
crowd.
was, a Democrat for most of his life.
But so
Or
it is
99% of
it
it,
is
yeah.
something that's bipartisan, and the bills that we passed in the Utah legislature were bipartisan
That's
as well.
right.
Both bills were. So
I like to see it keep going and starting to look at the Monsantos of the world and the Roundup and everything else we're putting on their food. So I'm interested to see where it goes from there. We did gossip about you on a couple of your trips. Were you at the meeting with the sheriff's deputies when they were meeting with the White House as well?
I was not at that meeting, but I do know a little bit about that
Okay,
meeting.
sources close
Yeah.
to us. So we were wondering if the sheriffs, when they went in there, asked for a new head of ICE here in Utah, because we know it's been a couple of years, but there was a bit of a squabble going on between the feds and the local jails. What say you? What are your sources saying?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think that as state leaders, we are all on board with getting a new ICE director. I think that's going to happen now. We've heard that that's happening, so we're excited about that. So we were in lockstep with all the sheriffs from all across the state that said Utah needs a new ICE director, not just in Utah, but in the region.
Do we need a new ICE director, Mara, or are they doing fine work?
No, they need new ski masks so that they can hide their faces when they're rounding up citizens and people that they don't know if they're citizens, but they're targeting based on their race. So you really need to be in tip-top shape when you're doing those kind of activities. Actually, we did need a new ICE guy because ICE is so heavy-handed with a bunch of tons of unfunded mandates. And then they look at the local guys and say, why aren't you getting along with us? And so while I don't support ICE tactics and while I don't support Trump, I do want to give a shout out to our local law enforcement who was talking about none of that and talking about the fact that the feds were coming in and saying, we need jail beds from you and we need compliance on these issues. We're going to give you no support. We're going to make it completely unrealistic. We're going to give you bureaucracy at a level no one has seen. It's going to provide no safety
like
to
they
anybody.
needed special shampoos, their own entrance.
Almost.
Yeah.
I mean, it was phenomenal. So this is not one, again, I'm sticking away from mandates and current initiatives, but ICE is really not a well-run machine, and the unfunded mandate and the arrogance and the persistent dismissal of really smart local law enforcement tactics made it untenable for the Utah Sheriff's Association. We're pointing out sheriffs because sheriffs are our jailers, and what usually the request is. So if we're saying, why do you always focus on sheriffs? It's because sheriffs are the jailers of record. And so ICE was broken, and we had an unusually aggressive and hostile ICE representative at the time. So this was really good local work to really persistently point out the issues, the real issues, no personalities involved, but the structural problems between the federal government and the state government. I don't think it's fixed, but having a new ICE leader goes a long way.
It does. And let me just help articulate what Mara was trying to say. When she said that...
What are you saying? I was struggling.
Let me translate what Mara said.
She was saying the feds coming in and pushing these policies on top of the
I meant the federal government.
The federal government. You meant the Biden administration was coming in pushing these.
No, I did not mean the Biden administration, my friend. In fact, what I meant is the Trump administration. And in fact, it was during the first Trump administration that these started. This has seen no negligible change. Biden, in fact, because if we recall, he couldn't find his way on immigration, was not a problem on this. Trump found his way to being really horrible on this issue, and he actually exacerbated the problem in Utah. So to be clear, Trump upped the ante. Biden couldn't find his nose on this issue, so he wasn't a problem.
Disagree on this issue.
You were talking about other issues, and I guess it's one good thing when you have a Republican president, you have a Republican legislature, you have a seat at the table. Are they actually listening and accomplishing something, or do they just make you feel like you're having a fun day at the White House?
No, they really are. And I'll just talk about one of the briefings. I could go into several different examples, but this is one that's big, and Mara knows this. I've taken this, let's turn some stuff over to Utah mode and let Utah manage some of these things. When we met with the federal government, or the Forest Service, we met with the Forest Service on one of those trips back to Washington, D.C. We said, look, we want to help you, right? You're not taking care of the campgrounds. You're not building more campgrounds. The need's there. Go try and get into a campground in the state of Utah. They're all full. They're hard. They're hard to be able to book one because they're full. So we said, we want to build new campgrounds. We want to manage the ones that are currently there. Sign us up. Let us help you. And so from that one of those meetings, I actually had a meeting last week with the Forest Service where they said, we want to partner with Utah. We want to take you up on that offer. So we'll be working through that with our state parks over the next coming months. And hopefully within the next 3 or 4 months, we have some agreements signed where Utah is taking over some of the management on some of the campgrounds and then also working to invest in building new campgrounds across the state.
Can we get 2-ply toilet paper at the campgrounds, or is that a no?
That's too big of an ask.
Oh, but then you just got to use half the roll. It's just maybe think about it for your next
Bring
meeting.
it from your home.
Bring it from home.
One of the things that's nice about working with the federal government is it usually opens up the way to work with local people who happen to be employed by the federal government, which is sort of different than the gratuitous use of the word feds. Because usually who's most frustrated in this relationship are local people employed by the federal government
are the feds, yeah.
who long felt that working with, whether that's a county jurisdiction or a city jurisdiction or a state jurisdiction, they've long felt like 2 hands are better than one. And it's policy that is too far removed, policy that is one size fits all, that has never been. Now, in fairness, we've had different administrations, Republican and Democrat, take a go at bringing more efficiency about a local jurisdiction working with a federal jurisdiction. But I want to, like, we always talk about the feds, but I want to give a shout out to those who are employed by the federal government and who work hard and are public servants, and they've lived and worked and grown up in Utah, and we paint them with the exact same brush.
You're one of us.
What we're complaining about is when policy is too one size fits all. Sometimes, like when the legislature tells every single city what to do, and it just doesn't work for them. It happens the same way when the feds are too one size fits all, and they don't allow local federal employees having regional policies. And what Mike and others at Utah have done well, and they feel more comfortable doing it with a Republican administration. But what's happened is it allows for federal assistance, federal financial support, and sometimes resource support, but it's being directed either by federal employees who live locally and in association with state and county government.
And I think that's what the Forest Service is talking about, right?
Yeah,
They, we said, hey, just turn it all over to us, give it to us, we'll go manage it. They said, yeah, we probably can't get there. However, we can do a cooperative, a shared stewardship agreement that you guys can manage it how you want. However, we'll be there to support and help.
And credit to Speaker Schultz, who really wants to manage this all on his own. But you've been very willing to both continue to advocate for your point of view that you should manage it, but also say, fine, I will jointly cooperate as long as I get a seat at the table. So I appreciate that you're agile about that.
Yeah.
Moving the needle.
A seat at the table is good. A couple national issues real quick, and then we're out of time. Work visas right now for immigrant workers has been an issue across the country. We saw some raids happening on farms in California. After that happened, President Trump was like, whoa, hold up. And it looks like there's some correction from the chopping that was going on, where it looks like there's some work right now trying to fast track or make an office available for work visas. This is important for Utah farmers, and that they can have people who can legally be here working, and that there's a process in place. Congress hasn't acted and made it work well. Will this office help, or is it just big talk and little walk?
No, I think it'll help, and I think people are committed for it to help. I think both sides are committed for it to help. Look, there's a big difference between legal immigration, work visas, and legal immigration, right? And that's where we need to focus on. We need to focus on these things. Congress, the president, everybody needs to come together and focus on reforming immigration. I hope this is one of those first steps in that process. So I think it will be. I think there's a hope there.
Yeah.
I've long said that the problem with immigration is a process problem. And so I am very hopeful because this is faced in the right direction. And I will say it was exacerbated by the fact that 80% of farm workers stopped showing up because the directive from Trump was so focused on brown people and so focused on traditional migrant labor that they became afraid to show up for their jobs. So one of the key things that needs to happen is, although you've opened up the process, and he's talking about day of permitting, which is awesome. If we could actually figure this out, this is a really big deal. But you gotta lay off of the vilification of a kind of person based on where they were born and where it's from, because I don't know anyone who's going to join a system that has been vilifying you. So, who wants to be on the American radar right now if you're a migrant worker? Because remember, most of these people, if in fact, at a lower level than U.S. citizens, they didn't commit crimes. They were coming into work lawfully. They wanted to be a part of our process. We just didn't have a process that worked for them.
And this is how we get our food. And if you stop the supply of food in our country, we've got a big problem.
But we've also got to stop vilifying these folks, or they'll have no incentive to write their name down in a system that we want them to write them in. But if they could actually produce on same-day verification, and what I like most about this is the Republicans who have pushed away business from the table for months now are actually showing up for business and showing up for agriculture, and Republicans haven't been there on these issues. And I will be really pleased if we can figure this out, because this has been our primary problem.
I'm excited about it.
I think you can't wait 6 months or a year if you're waiting to work on a farm.
Utah is also the right size to be successful, right? I mean, it's going to take California, it's going to take the bigger producing states a minute, but because we have control over our communications levers, because we have access to our leadership, if Utah, like Mike has talked about in several different areas, if Utah could lead out on actually having a process that works here, that would be such a huge win for us.
All right, let's do it, Utah. And last but not least, President Trump dropped some bombs on Iran and then dropped an F-bomb in an interview that went around the world. He was pretty mad at Israel and Iran. Was this a time where it was fitting to use that, or should presidents never say the naughty F word?
No, he's looked like an idiot the last couple of weeks. I mean, come on, it lacks decorum. Everybody always swears. We know that. But this was not the time nor the place when you're getting into the helicopter. He spent this morning, he addressed the nation, and he spends most of his time justifying his behavior. He spends most of his time attacking people. I will say we have an incredible military who pulls off things very well, and they're first rate. But the other thing to be noted, and what offends me the most, is the power, the respect, and the authority that Trump is using. It is not his. It is the United States of America. And we have collectively earned that over the time. And I resent that he has personalized America in that way. And what makes America great is not an individual leader, and what are the symbols of power. And the fact that he uses them and personalizes them offends me over and over. He has the great honor of stewarding our collective authority, our collective power, and our collective character. And I am offended when he misuses that by not acting judiciously and spending his time promoting himself. And so while I want to applaud the military for carrying out what is a precise one, the fact that he makes this about him continues to be offensive.
President Trump just came off a huge win. I mean, you look at this, it was a
So that was a Trump win, not an American win.
It was a decision made by President Trump that no other president has had the cojones to make, and for who knows how long.
Oh, we've been in Iran before. We've established a long history of meddling with Iran.
For 30 years, presidents have talked about dismantling Iran's nuclear program. President Trump came up with a strategy.
Back 2 weeks.
President Trump's team came up with a strategy, and they implemented a strategy, and it was more than 2 weeks.
In less than 12 hours, because the day before he said he wasn't going to do this strategy.
No, he was.
So he's like he's strategizing on the fly.
What are you going to say? Oh yes, I'm going to go ahead and send bombers over there. By the way, you're not going to be able to detect them. But I'm just going to tell you I'm going to go over there and do that.
By the military that they didn't have those directives. I mean, that's not
that's
a guess.
because everything leaks. So it was very strategic. They did it on purpose. They did it in a way so that it was by surprise, which you need to do. Those people that are chirping about this needing to go through Congress, where were they when Biden dropped bombs? Where were they when Clinton dropped bombs?
So you were okay with those Biden and
yes,
Clinton
I was actually.
And you were okay with those
I was okay.
actions.
When was it Obama that took out Osama bin Laden? I was absolutely okay with that. Yes. Am I okay with President Trump taking out Iran's nuclear program? Yes. Look, it's a tough decision. Those that want to criticize it have to say, are you okay with Iran having a nuclear weapon? Who's okay with that?
I would like us to all give them away and just fight with snowballs.
They're tough decisions that have to be made. President Trump did a fantastic job. Our U.S. military did a fantastic job on implementing this. We'll see what the ultimate results are. It set them back a lot more than 2 weeks. Is it 2 years? Is it 20 years?
None of us know that.
We don't know that.
Including President Trump. He doesn't know that.
None of us completely know, and I don't think we know what President Trump knows. And
Nobody knows what President Trump knows, that's for sure.
And I don't think that we should, to be honest with you. And to the point of we're not going to go ahead and say, oh, by the way, Congress, we're going to do a secret mission to go over there and
it wasn't
undetected.
Secret. He was playing this out in real time.
It wasn't secret.
No.
They sent decoys off to take people's minds off and put them on the other bombers that went over there so that they could
bombing at the time, and he
go in there
said
with
in
the
the
US.
next 2 weeks I'm going to decide this. This was the least.
It was brilliant.
I mean, this was. But again, my contention was about the fact that he makes it about him and not the United States.
I do give a high five to the military that made the round trip effort
Absolutely.
from Missouri. Can you imagine?
Hours.
That's a long ways to be in a flight.
Undetected. I mean, just think about the capabilities there. That blows my mind. 37 hours. They flew all across the world, undetected. Nobody knew. Pretty impressive.
Got to stretch your legs after that.
Yes.
Well, it was nice having you in here, Speaker Schultz. Anything you'd like us to know before we part ways and see you again in maybe 6 months to a year?
Hey, come have me back. I'm excited. I like it. I
Excellent.
appreciate it.
All right. I'm sorry, Mara, that this was like the Schultz show. I felt like we had to catch up on him. So thank you for playing nice and being
Isn't
here.
it always
Yes,
about the
I know.
elected
We
officials?
actually agreed on quite a few
We
things.
agreed on a lot.
We do get a
yeah.
lot of comments on this podcast that you should be an elected official. They want you to run. They like your speeches. So anyhow, this might be your time to announce that you're running for something.
Would you support me, Speaker Schultz?
Over a Democrat or over a Republican?
Over two people. Let's not make this about party.
Hey.
Do I have your support?
Do you
I would
know
support
and
Mara for
support
running.
her?
I would. And because
Running. Not the
Mara
action of doing it.
Mara is one of the smartest people you will ever meet. She works really hard. My comment about was earlier about not working was very sarcastic. She knew that. She works extremely hard. I wish she was a little more conservative on some issues, but she's reasonable and she's rational, and you can find a pathway forward.
Well,
No,
if you
now
take
you
her
have to
rope
end
and
that
in
with vote for
vote for Mara.
Well,
We'll
we
just-
got to
we'll
figure out
just
what you're
take this
running
tape.
for first, and then. But yeah,
Okay.
I would absolutely support
Maybe if
Mara.
you take her out to the ranch and have her roping and riding, maybe you'll get her feeling a little more conservative. I don't
There
know.
you go.
I spent some childhood on a ranch,
All right.
and it didn't really make me.
It
more
didn't work. No.
conservative.
All right. Send me videos if it happens, though. Thank you for
Gave
hanging
you
out.
common sense, though. That's where you get your common sense
I
from.
do
see?
love that. For our dedicated listeners, we're going to be taking a summer break. We usually do this every July. Come back mid-August. If there's something crazy wild, we'll come back. So we're hoping the world and the universe calm down. I'll keep bringing you interviews from some of our other politicians. Hopefully Senator Mike Lee will be in the mood to talk soon, and we'll bring that to you here. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back again soon.